introducing Elizabeth Moore. She's a dear friend of mine. She's a co-creator of the Climate Center. But more importantly, or not as importantly, maybe I should say, she's a cog in the wheel, and she is part of the team that makes the environmental movement, and if you want to call it that, in Sarasota, really go. So on top you see CAC, that's us, and of course we'll always be in the first position because we're the race car. And then you see the moat, okay, they go underwater over there, and Elizabeth is on the board of trustees there, as she is on the CAC. And the Lemur Foundation, lemurs exist in Florida too, not just in Madagascar. And then the Conservation Foundation, which is so important and is really the segue into this part, because thank God we had conserved what you're about to see. But what I want to say is thank you to Elizabeth Moore, and she's going to give us a short story, and she will be the only one to do a short story so far. Elizabeth Moore, thank you so much.
Do I push this right here?
Yes, sir. I'll switch them.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Almost seems like afternoon already. Bob, you're a dear friend, and I am so honored to be a founding member of the Climate Adaptation Center and one of the sponsors today. It means a great deal to me, and I am so very happy to see we've almost doubled in size since last year, and you can see that this Climate Adaptation Center is becoming more and more relevant to us and to our community as time goes on. We're making impact in the decision makers, hopefully, and they are going to hear us because where change really happens is from the ground up. Bob, when you say I'm a cog in the wheel, it gave me pause because I wanted to say, like, think about all the sort of the sectors that I'm sort of influential in, that I have relationships in, some even friendships. And it was a good little lesson for me to just go through this myself. Business and banking, arts and culture, education, including higher education, sports and media, medical and therapeutic, construction, agricultural and local food systems, marine recreation, marine science, homeowners associations, stargazing community, and of course government and on a local and regional level. So those are all networks, and I know that a lot of people in this room, connect or are a part of those kind of sectors. And these networks that we're creating are really important because we can influence each other and communicate and network, and that's where those networks are really powerful. All of these sectors that I just described or listed all have something to do with the climate situation here. And I just want to make a story, share a personal story, because we out at Triangle Ranch had an extreme event in the wake of Hurricane Ian. So in 2016, I purchased a 1,143 acre ranch, which is a working cattle ranch in Myakka, and it's just north of the state park. In fact, 3 miles of the Myakka River run through Triangle Ranch and then down into the park, continuing all through the park down into Charlotte Harbor. Well, when I bought the ranch, I asked the previous owner, so I know this floods, and they go, no, it floods, but it hasn't been really that bad. It comes up to the river banks and a little bit in the wetlands. And by the way, a lot of my ranch is a wetland. It's called the Tatum Sawgrass. And when I got the opportunity to build a few hospitality little cracker cottages out there, I hired Progressive Water Resource Management, Steve Swa, who's here today, to give me a flood, 100-year flood plan. So I could build the cottages up so high, so if it does flood, and we know it will flood, no problem. If you're staying overnight, you can arrive by kayak or swamp buggy or airboat or something like that. But what happened in the wake of Hurricane Ian is this. Yeah, yeah. Never in the history of Triangle Ranch have we had this much water, where buildings were underwater. This is my my little house that I moved from Siesta Key that many of you know about, and I know that many of you here have been out to Triangle Ranch, and you've been in this house. I moved this house in pieces from, I saved it from Siesta Key and moved it out to my ranch, and we actually did a borrow pit to build up the land there, and then we built it up 3 feet on pilings. I couldn't even identify where this was because there's so much water there, and it just confuses you. But as you can see, the solar, I had put the solar panels on top of one of the houses there. Everything is underwater. It was really devastating to me because the cottages were damaged. I had to pull up the floors. There was mold and everything. But the water recedes, but I lost none of the cows because we moved the cows up to higher land. What happens at Triangle Ranch, and the reason I bought it, because it was my gift to watershed and wildlife, that was my intent, was that all the water from the whole region falls into Triangle Ranch in that area. But that's what it's supposed to do. I sustained, and so for a few days after Hurricane Ian, all the water starts coming to Triangle Ranch. So it actually grew, it was deep, and it got worse and worse and worse. So recovery after the storm, knowing that nobody died, no cows died. During and after this flooding, the ranch and all the water, it was an explosion of biology. There were fish and alligators and birds, and it was just an explosion of life there. And this is what this Triangle Ranch is supposed to do. I know that. It was an extreme situation, but the water did recede, and all the nutrients from all this water reinvigorated, restored all these wetlands. Yes, I lost a lot of trees. In fact, I lost about 70 trees, including about 30 Florida oaks, which is very, very sad. So it's a good story, but it's a tough story. But nature is resilient. Trees will grow back. The water recedes, and there it is. So I want to make a point that it's really important to save land. Not all land can become housing developments and hospitals and parking lots and all that thing. The water has to have somewhere to go. And we have to save land like this. In fact, we have to save a lot more land. At Conservation Foundation of the Gulf Coast, that's what we do. We save land for watershed, animal corridors, and habitat. And that's how nature is going to ensure that this world is resilient. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah?
You can take questions.
Yeah. Any comments or questions? Yes, Steve. We had to pull up the floors, and I know now not to stain them, seal them. We're just going to have pine floors, and the water will come up, and I do expect this probably will happen again. I'm not going to raise the structures anymore, but I'm still going to have people out there and to have people overnight, and it was costly. I have to replace like a few appliances and floors and the air conditioning, but all in all, it's It's what nature does. My rancher had to get around the property on an airboat. But the water did not go into that main house, which we call Little Siesta. Thank goodness, because it's all made out of Pecky cypress.
That close.
Thank you for sharing this incredibly important story and for emphasizing the importance of saving land. That said, I'm struck by how much care you took in the beginning to do the right thing with building up to a high level, and then 3 feet on top of that. Even with that kind of care, everything was flooded. So do you have any advice or suggestions for the rest of us about how much care we can actually rely on, the confidence we can or cannot have in doing adequate preparations to prevent flooding like this? I mean, how high do you have to build?
In the inland, it's hard to know, but because of my low-lying area in there, I'm flooding a lot worse. Yes, Arcadia is also a very low-lying area, and though, like, that whole town flooded, businesses and shops. But all those businesses and shops and everything were built 50 years ago, and the floods were not that bad back then. Building up on stilts is great, but
You had a once in a 200-year event.
yeah. I prepared for a 1 in a 100 year, and I had a once in 200 year event. It was just something. So, yes.
Nature-based solutions. So thank you for the early segue. I hope you all stick around for that. But my comment was looking at how high up you built and just the question of what others can do. It is important. Your example, your preparation and the knowledge of how your land reacted to the water, you had the room, thank goodness the luxury of the room for the water to go. One thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that you had solar panels, your I would assume septic out there, things like that. Here near the coast in developed neighborhoods, our sewer systems, our infrastructure is buried in a very porous ground. And so we talk about how high do we have to build up, and we need to remember that your house can be here, but the road getting into it, the sewer system, you guys know if you leave something out in the salt water and it's not washed off, the corrosion that occurs. So that idea of resilience of individual parcel is something that needs to be considered in the larger infrastructure view. But ranch is beautiful. I hope to come see it sometime.
Thank you. And
We'd like to do more questions, but we really have to move on. But you can make your last comment.
okay. Well, I guess my last comment is we have to figure out ways to adapt and to mitigate. Otherwise, good luck to you in your senior year.
Perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.